And talk about all this with Chris Cocking. He is a crowd psychologist. Chris, good to speak with you. First of all, what is your take of the events over the last 4 nights? What's your view of it as a crowd psychologist?
Well, as a crowd psychologist, it's clear that we do have a deep problem going on in the UK at the moment. But what we would say is that you need to consider this problem in a deep social context. And the thing that worries me at the moment is the discourse has been presented in a way where the debate seems to stop at very harsh law and order enforcement measures. And we'd say the debate needs to go much deeper than that and be much colder and more logical and look at the causes of how such disorder develops and spreads, and also ways to prevent it.
Well, and Chris, I think you understand as well, if you listen to the British Prime Minister at all today, that the rhetoric is getting tougher too. Let's have you have a listen and everyone have a listen to some of the comments from David Cameron, and then let me have you respond.
It is all too clear that we have a big problem with gangs in our country. For too long, there's been a lack of focus on the complete lack of respect shown by these groups of thugs. I'm clear that they are in no way representative of the vast majority of young people in our country who despise them, frankly, as much as the rest of us do.
And Chris, you take a bit of issue, don't you, with the idea of some of the name calling that you've heard in the media and characterizations of thugs and the like, don't you?
Well, yes, we do, because we would say ideas that people who engage in these behaviours are mindless thugs and acting in senseless behaviours is just not supported by the evidence that we've gathered in over 30 years of research into disorder in the inner cities in the UK and abroad. What behaviours people exhibit are often very meaningful to them, but rationality is very much in the eye of the beholder, and we need to take a step back and look at that, rather than just using terms like mindless thugs, because all they do is inject more emotion into a debate which frankly needs to be treated a little bit more logically and a bit more neutrally.
Well, and Chris, what about the other side of that, of calling it what it clearly is? I mean, there can be no justification, whatever your grievance is. Can there be for the kind of violence that we've seen over the last 4 nights?
Well, one thing I think we should make clear is in no way whatsoever does the work we do intend to act as a kind of apologist for what occurs. But what we're trying to say is that if the debate stops at definitions of mindless thugs and harsher punishments, what it will do is increase the alienation and disconnection that lots of young people are feeling that may be a reason behind what's going on, because the fundamental thing we say is that riots always happen in a social context. And if you don't consider the social context in which the riots occur, you're not getting a full picture.
Well, what's the social context? What's the national debate that needs to be held? You know, we talk about it all the time. Let's have a national debate about this issue or that issue, and it seldom happens.
Well, I think it's complicated and it's on different levels. You could say certainly the immediate trigger of what caused these disturbances was the shooting of a young black male in Tottenham, but clearly there is a wider context as well, which would explain why the riots have spread to some cities, but more importantly not to others. And we would say that can be explained in terms of distrust between local communities and the police, but on a wider social context of disconnection from society in general. And we are living in an era of austerity and public spending caps. I only heard yesterday that 8 out of 13 youth centres in Haringey have been closed. Now, to say that it's got nothing to do with it and it's pure criminality, again, I think is just preventing a reasoned and full debate being had about the topic.
Chris, appreciate your time. Thank you. Chris Cocking is a crowd psychologist joining me from London.